In today's Business Matters, well-known drugstore chain Walgreens is going private in a potential billion-dollar agreement. Walgreens Boots Alliance closed a deal valued at nearly $24 billion. So Thursday's announcement comes after the company's largely disastrous run on the public stock markets. So over the past 5 years, Walgreens shares have lost nearly 80% of their value. The company says a private equity firm has agreed to pay more than $11 a share in cash. Walgreens first went public in 1927. The deal brings an end to the chain's nearly 100 years as a publicly traded company. Exchanges on the Nasdaq could soon take place around the clock. International demand has surged in recent years for the U.S. market. That's why Nasdaq plans to introduce 24-hour trading. In a LinkedIn post, Nasdaq President Hao Cohen said that it has started discussions with regulators. It expects to launch 24-hour trading 5 days a week in the second half of next year. The round-the-clock trading model will allow exchanges to tap into global demand. Brokerages Charles Schwab and Robinhood currently offer limited 24-hour trading on their platforms. Meanwhile, U.S. lawmakers are pressing Chinese telecommunications companies over any connections to the military or authorities in China. Leaders of a House panel have asked China Mobile, China Telecom, and China Unicom to answer its questions by the end of the month. This is based on a letter seen by Reuters. Lawmakers have cited national security concerns posed by the company's presence in the U.S. They fear the firms could exploit access to American data through their U.S. cloud and internet businesses. The letters show growing bipartisan concern about the Chinese Communist Party and the telecommunications footprint in the U.S. after a series of Chinese-led attacks. The subsidiary of the world's most heavily indebted property developer seeing major decline in profit. So China's Evergrande Property Services Group said today it could see a decrease of up to 37% in its annual profit for 2024. And the decline is due to legal expenses, among other reasons. Evergrande Property began legal proceedings against its parent. In early January, a Guangzhou court in China ordered Evergrande to repay $1.585 billion owed to its subsidiary. Evergrande Property expects to lose a record loss of up to $80 million in profit. And a message to Congress from a group of American businesses. The U.S. must crack down on Chinese companies being subsidized by the Chinese Communist Party and those circumventing U.S. tariffs by shipping goods through third countries. Executives from a slate of mid-sized industrial companies met with lawmakers on Capitol Hill Wednesday. They said for years, the U.S. has been losing out on tariff revenue. And what's more, American companies have been forced out of business by Chinese firms that exploited trade rules. Take a listen.
For years, we have battled unfairly traded imports of cast iron products. Heavily subsidized Chinese foundries operate below cost and dump these products in the United States far below fair market value. Over the course of the last 7 years, we have spent millions of dollars to avail ourselves of every legal remedy to stop dumping, illegal subsidies, transshipment, and customs fraud from Chinese producers who wish to take our jobs. We have filed and won anti-dumping and countervailing duty cases, with duties ranging from 41 to 494%. To avoid paying these duties, Chinese producers transship their products through third countries, primarily Malaysia and Cambodia, where they are fraudulently labeled as originating from those nations. By our estimate, and to Betsy's point, we believe Customs has been unable to collect $51 million in duties owed on our products alone.
So the speaker just now, that was Brad Moeller. He's the Vice President of Corporate Communications, Charlotte Pipe and Foundry. So the company has been founded for more than 120 years in 1901. It's the largest American producer of cast iron, plastic pipe, and fittings for plumbing. Next, China saw imports unexpectedly tumble over January and February, with exports also cooling off. Inbound shipments dropped 8.4% when they had been expected to rise. Exports grew at less than half the forecast rate. The disappointing figures comes as the trade war heats up. Since taking office, President Trump has imposed an extra 10% tariff on Chinese goods and then doubled it for a cumulative 20% in new levies. Now, the drop-off in export growth may be related to shippers rushing out goods in previous weeks to get ahead of the curbs. As for imports, experts say it may show that Beijing is scaling back purchases of key commodities. Numbers were down for grains, iron ore, and crude oil. President Trump suspended yesterday tariffs of 25% he had imposed this week on most goods from Canada and Mexico, the latest twist in an ever-unfolding cross-border trade drama. Take a look.
One for Canada, one for Mexico.
Yes, sir.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday delayed for nearly 1 month his 25% tariffs on a wide range of goods from both Canada and Mexico. The latest twist in his fast-shifting trade policy. The exemption covers Canadian and Mexican goods under the North American Trade Pact. It comes just 2 days after Trump imposed sweeping tariffs on goods from the country's two largest trading partners, which has rattled financial markets and business leaders, who warned the move would hurt American consumers.
Después de hablar con la presidenta de México, Claudia Sheinbaum.
At a press conference, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum read aloud Trump's Truth Social post announcing the 1-month reprieve. She said the decision followed a, quote, respectful phone call with Trump, during which she explained that Mexico's security measures have been working to reduce the flow of fentanyl into the U.S.
Solamente en febrero.
In February alone, the reduction in fentanyl seizures on the U.S. side of the border with Mexico was reduced by 41.5%.
Entonces le dije, estamos teniendo resultados.
So I said to him, we are getting results, President Trump. Now that you put in the tariffs, how are we going to continue collaborating with something that hurts the people of Mexico?
April 2nd is going to be a very big day for America.
Trump said the tariff exemptions will last until April 2nd, when he has threatened to impose a global regime of reciprocal tariffs on all U.S. trading partners. The latest development comes a day after Trump exempted automotive goods from the 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico. Economists said those levies threaten to stoke inflation and stall growth across all three economies.
A blow to America's farm sector. Canada has suspended imports from the biggest U.S. pork processing plant. And this comes as Washington and Ottawa spar over tariffs. But the U.S. Department of Agriculture says the suspension was unrelated to recent trade activity. Instead, the agency says this is in line with standard protocols. Under Canadian law, 3 non-compliance issues within 6 months triggers a temporary suspension. The USDA says it's working with Smithfield Foods in North Carolina to resolve the issues and see whether Canada will reconsider the suspension. A French company is joining the Trump administration's fleet to revive the shipping industry in the U.S. CMA CGM has pledged to invest $20 billion in the U.S. to build out shipping logistics and terminals. The company says projects will include the expansion of container ports and the creation of an air cargo hub in Chicago. The CEO of the French shipping firm said that the investment will create 10,000 jobs. CMA CGM has started talks about possibly building medium-sized container vessels in the U.S. President Trump is trying to weaken China's grip on the shipping sector. He's expected to impose a levy on ships linked to China when they make stops at U.S. ports. Gold price swings have calmed. As a result, gold moving from London to the U.S. has slowed. The London Bullion Market Association reported that the outflow of gold stored in London vaults to the U.S. eased up last month. In fact, the amount of gold stored in London vaults at the end of last month dipped to a 5-year low. Since late November, though, when President Trump threatened tariffs on Mexico and Canada, bullion worth nearly $65 billion entered the COMEX gold stocks that drove them up 126% to a record high. The inflow to the COMEX stocks has significantly slowed in recent weeks. Premiums between U.S. gold futures and London spot prices have returned to normal levels. A privately owned lunar lander is no longer working after landing sideways. It's now stuck in a crater near the moon's south pole. Uncertainty of outcome sent the company stock down on Thursday And today, officials say the lander's mission is over. NTD Sean Marshall has more on the story.
Texas-based Intuitive Machines stock was down over 22% at the time of this report on Friday. The uncertain condition of their Athena moon lander on Thursday left people wondering about the lander's future. Despite the announcement of a successful landing, a lack of clear information triggered investors, resulting in a sharp sell-off after the mission's live stream ended. Despite the drop, the stock was still around 60% higher than it was a year ago. The private lunar lander is no longer working after landing sideways in a crater near the moon's south pole, and its mission is over, officials said Friday. After landing, mission controllers were able to accelerate several program and payload milestones, including part of a NASA experiment, before the lander's batteries depleted. Intuitive Machines does not expect Athena to recharge. This was the second landing attempt for Intuitive Machines. A mission last year also ended with a sideways landing. The company's About page says Intuitive Machines provides lunar delivery, data transmission, and infrastructure services to open access to the moon for the progress of humanity. NASA originally paid $62 million to Intuitive Machines to get its 3 experiments to the moon. Intuitive Machines CEO said Thursday that the company may delay its 3rd lunar landing mission set for next year under the NASA Commercial Lunar Payload Services program. The space agency also awarded the firm a 4th mission in 2027 to deliver 6 payloads to the moon that could help reveal the origin of water throughout the solar system. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
And Roundup weed killer could be pulled from shelves unless it gets more legal protection over liability. So far, the maker, Bayer, has paid about $10 billion to settle disputed claims that Roundup causes cancer. The company has set aside another $6 billion for more pending cases. The German company argues people should not be able to take it to court, given the EPA and regulators around the world have repeatedly labeled the product as safe to use. A note from analysts revealed that Bayer leadership has said it will need to exit the business without legal clarity. It has called on U.S. lawmakers to strengthen legal protection against liability. President Donald Trump is considering extending the deadline for TikTok to be sold. Trump said yesterday he would probably extend the timeline if a deal isn't reached by the initial deadline. In January, the president signed an executive order giving TikTok Chinese parent company 75 days to find a new owner. He didn't say how long that extension would last. He added that China will also play a role in the decision. Last April, President Biden signed a law requiring the app to be sold or face a U.S. ban. Law enforcement officials and the lawmakers who backed the bill argue that TikTok poses a national security threat. The U.S. economy added 151,000 jobs last month, according to the latest jobs report, the first fully monthly tally of the labor market under Donald Trump's second presidential term. For more analysis, I spoke to Julia Pollack, chief economist at ZipRecruiter. Take a look. How's the labor market doing? Because the February job report showing below expectations growth. What does this signal? Is a slowdown on the horizon?
This is a solid report. I mean, that 151,000 number should be seen in the context of an administration in which immigration has already fallen substantially, and a time in our history in which the population is aging out of the labor force. So it's a very strong top line number. At the same time, there are some signs of softening in this report, not of a collapse, but of some signs of softness. For example, the work week is unusually short, 34.1 hours. That's a number typically only seen in recessions. It coincides with an increase in the share of workers working part-time for economic reasons. That means forced to take part-time jobs when they'd rather be working full-time. That is happening at the same time that we've seen a pop in the share of workers holding multiple jobs. And partly it really is because employers are cutting hours and workers are needing to find more than one job to pay the bills.
How significant are the impacts from federal job cuts? Because the unemployment rate actually ticked up, right, to 4.1%?
Yeah, Yes, so the unemployment rate probably does not reflect the federal workforce cuts. Remember, this report is based on a survey conducted in the week of February 10th, and so it only reflects a small share of the federal workforce cuts that have taken place. That 10,000 decline that we saw in the number of federal workers is probably a fraction of the 30,000 probationary workers who had been laid off at that point. And we'll probably see that number get bigger in the coming months.
So in addition to the work hours, labor force participation declined as well. What's your angle on this? What's causing this? Something to worry about or not?
I think it's connected to sectoral trends. So what we're seeing is restaurants shutting down and shedding jobs. In this report, 27,500 jobs were lost at restaurants. Why? Well, it's a hangover of the big spending that we did and the high inflation and high interest rates. Those especially are hurting small businesses, small restaurants that rely on credit card financing. Most small businesses in America don't rely on business loans, they rely on credit cards. And those payments are just too high for businesses to stay afloat right now. We also, why is that connected to labor force participation? Well, restaurants are often the bottom rung of the labor force ladder. They're an entry point for workers. The other entry point that we're seeing struggle is in tech, with computer systems design and related services shedding 9,800 jobs in this report. Tech has lost jobs for about 2 years now, and there are lots of young Americans who, thinking that tech was the place to be, majored in computer science and related fields. And they're finding a very soft labor market. And so many are taking a long time to hit their stride and enter the labor force.
All right, Julia, always great to speak with you. Thank you very much for your time.
Good talking to you.
And Costco could be mixing up its supply chain over tariffs. The membership-only retailer said it would consider making changes to its international supply chain if tariffs lead to big price hikes. On an earnings call, the CEO explained that there aren't many items it can't find a replacement for. On that same call, the warehouse giant reported missing Wall Street expectations for its second quarter profit. Only about 1/3 of Costco's U.S. sales are products imported from other countries, with less than half of those from China, Mexico, and Canada. But Costco's margins are being impacted by soaring coffee, cocoa, and egg prices. Wendy's decades-long chocolate or vanilla-only Frosty flavors will end with a new makeover later this year. The new offerings, called Frosty Swirls and Frosty Fusions, will allow customers to either add new sauces or mix-ins with new ones to create unseen new flavor combinations. New packaging with a new cup lid, a blue spoon will also be added to create maximum customer satisfaction. The change comes at a time when sales are down across the industry and customers want more and better offerings while competition is getting tougher by the day. Okay, on to stocks. U.S. indexes finished higher today, rebounding from early declines after Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said the economy was in a good place, but stocks still posted a weekly loss on uncertainty about U.S. trade policy. Now, markets have been roiled this entire week by uncertainty about Trump's tariff decisions. So that's on imported goods from Canada, Mexico, and China. Meanwhile, reciprocal trade barriers and other duties are expected to take effect in the following weeks. We'll keep a close eye on that. So just a quick update there, and that's it for today's Business Matters.